often find themselves in a whirlwind of responsibilities, leaving little time to take care of yourself. But what if there's a simple way to protect your cognitive health amidst all this caregiving chaos? Today, we're diving deep into how caregivers can harness the potential of lifestyle changes to safeguard their brains, from navigating the sweet tooth to unlocking the transformative potential of creativity. We're exploring strategies that can help you stay sharp, focused, and resilient. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Fading Memories podcast. Thanks for joining us. We are talking about caring for yourself while caring for a loved one, which is not as easy as it sounds, but is extremely important. And that is why I have Dr. Taryn Clark. She is a neurologist. And if I remember correctly, I think she also has some personal caregiving in her background. So thanks for joining me, Taryn.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to talking about this important topic.
Yeah, it's everybody always says you have to take care of yourself, and we always think, well, I don't have time, blah blah blah, we don't make time. And I actually do have a talk that I give on, it's titled Don't Let Caregiving Break Your Heart. Literally, it's basically that broken heart syndrome is actually a thing, and it goes into all those kind of details. So yeah, it really is important to make ourselves a priority every day, which again is not easy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Why don't you give everyone your background? I hope I got it correct. It's like, hopefully all my brain cells are working today.
You did. Like you said, I'm a neurologist and I've been in private practice in Southern California for about 20 years. And my transformative moment in this space really came um, when I was a patient. I've worn a lot of hats. As you said, I'm a neurologist, so I treat brain disease. I have been a caregiver for my mother, who has passed, unfortunately, from Alzheimer's disease. But it was in my role as a patient that I really woke up to how inadequate our preventative medication or our preventative health plans for brain health are. Um, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate. I was seeing a new doctor, and as a physician, I never put that I'm a physician on my intake sheet. That's a different story. We could talk about that too. So I was seeing a new physician who's quite well respected in our community, and she didn't know who I was, thankfully. And so she was looking through my family history, and she got to my dad's side, and I had noted that he had a heart attack in his 50s, and she immediately launched into a just extensive plan of all the risk factors we're going to look for and how we're going to manage all of those. And I felt empowered and ready to go. And then she looked at my mom's side and noted that my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in her 60s and said, "Oh, that's terrible." And that's terrible was the sum total risk reduction plan for brain health for me. And that really woke me up, because I know how much we can do to prevent or stave off Alzheimer's disease, especially with a positive family history. And it made me realize this is what most patients are hearing. They're not getting any sort of risk factor identification. They're not getting any sort of guidance. And we can prevent up to 40% of dementia with managing lifestyle risk factors alone. So that really woke me up. My role as a patient. And so I actually ended up reformatting my clinic to address preventative brain health for the kids of my patients. And then that turned into a book, so I could reach more people and empower them to take control of their lifestyle factors.
I have a past guest, and I talk about her a lot just because she's kind of I think, the perfect case study. It's Rebecca Cobb. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 5 years prior to our recording, which was in March of 2024. And I can guarantee you, if you watch the YouTube video or even listening to just the audio podcast, you would not know she had Alzheimer's. And when she was diagnosed, and she was very, very blessed, she had a general physician that caught the warning signs that were not typical. One was increased need for sleep, and the other one random occurrence of getting lost going to some place that she's been to a lot. Neither one of us knew if this doctor, this general physician, had a history of dealing with Alzheimer's personally. I am 100% convinced that she did, because I don't know that most people would even suspect a dementia of any kind from those two seemingly non-related symptoms. So she was diagnosed very quickly, and she decided that she was going to do all of the lifestyle changes. And 5 years later, she was still doing really well. She wrote a whole book about it. I will have to put that link in the show notes because the title of the book is slipping my mind at the moment. Oh, it's called Still Me. Um, well, sometimes the brain cells do work. And I find it really interesting that, we now have these treatments for early stage dementias, mostly Alzheimer's. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have well, technically a third drug, but I guess we're not using the first one. We have another drug. It's working better than the second one. And look at all these lifestyle things you should do. I find it very fascinating. We get some medicinal treatment, and then we turn to the more natural stuff. So I don't know if you've experienced that in your clinic. You were probably already doing suggesting all the lifestyle changes. So do you use any of the treatments, the Leqembi or the donanemab?
So since those came out, I've been doing preventative
Hmm.
brain health. So I don't use those because those are for people who are diagnosed with disease. But I have been incorporating pretty intense lifestyle modifications in my patients with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias for a long time, because none of those medications work without that foundation of lifestyle change. And so, I mean, it's kind of like, if we think of it like diabetes, okay, we can treat the diabetes, but we can't still be pouring sugar into the system. We've got to treat the disease and, you know, keep it from getting worse. We've got to take away the root cause. And so that's where all of those medications will not shine unless we stop the underlying offending root causes like inflammation, and a lot of that comes from diet, nutrition, lack of sleep. So it's really all of it. And I think there's a bit of a lag in the medical community in terms of realizing just how powerful those lifestyle modifications are. And for patients, it's really encouraging because there's so much they can do that doesn't require a doctor's guidance once they get going on, their lifestyle choices and understand how they directly tie to their brain health. Um, they really are off and running, and their families are off and running. I mean, it improves the entire family's health. Um, so that has been inspiring, and I've really enjoyed that part of my career because I do see people stall out their symptoms, which is awesome. I mean, to watch somebody not deteriorate is such a gift. Like the woman you were speaking of, I've seen
Hmm.
it done. I've had Parkinson's patients who completely reverse their memory problems. They've been the ones who have had the most reversal with lifestyle risk factors that I've seen. But I've certainly seen people who've stayed stable for just years and years, and everybody around them is in a state of disbelief, and it's really a wonderful state of disbelief, in fact.
I have talked to neurologists, a couple of them who, and this is, well, no, it's not really off topic, that feel a very rigid protocol of lifestyle interventions, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
could possibly actually reverse Alzheimer's. I'm on the fence on that one. I don't know how you feel about that, but there's evidence out there that it definitely slows down the disease. So that's what we're going to talk about
Yes,
today.
so there is a great neurologist. Actually, he's in California, and he came up with a book and a program to reverse Alzheimer's disease. And as you said, it's super dramatic lifestyle changes. It's like completely upside down. And so I think that is, I mean, he has data to back that up. And when I first heard about his data, which came out in 2013, I think, my first response was, okay, fantastic. You've done it with 9 patients. When you do it with 10,000, let's see which one of those interventions did all this, right? And then it became clear over time, but it's not one intervention. It's the combination of all the interventions working in synergy that's really the magic sauce to all of this. And so I had several patients who they, and more so actually their caregiver spouse, was very motivated to adopt all those interventions and try to reverse it. And unfortunately, I didn't find anybody who was able to fully adhere to the program because it is so dramatic. And so they were trying to go from kind of the average American lifestyle to this. I mean, in his original study, one of the women in the study did so much yoga, she became a yoga instructor. So some of the interventions aren't necessarily realistic for people to go from where they are today to that. So that was also part of the motivation for writing Brain Health Action Plan. It's more designed to meet people where they actually are in the reality of the food ecosystem we're living in, the stress ecosystem we're living in, to get them moving away from disease and toward health. And then from there, health is really the absence of disease. From there, the next push will be, okay, from here, we'll go push towards wellness, which is really thriving optimization of lifestyle. But this book will meet anybody where they are and is approachable, because I saw those people failing because they were trying to make too many dramatic changes at once. And then they just didn't end up making any changes. And so if we can just go gradually, bit by bit, once you start having little successes, it really feeds more success. And all these lifestyle factors are interrelated. So, if you think that, maybe, one of the interventions in the book is cutting down on sugar. And I'm not asking people to eat zero sugar. I'm asking them to try to get towards the American Heart Association guidelines for added sugar. But the interesting thing is, somebody may look at that and say, no, I have a sweet tooth. I'm in love with a certain cupcake, or I love this ice cream, And so they might totally write off, like, I'm not going to be able to do that. So maybe they start with sleep optimization and work on their sleep hygiene and they're sleeping better. Well, the magic of that is that when you sleep better, it changes your satiety hormones and your craving for sweets. And so it might be that once you get one area optimized, when you try to address sugar, it's easier to cut it down. So that's how I approached it in the book. It's a little more flexible. I just find when you try to put people into these really hyper regimented systems, they just don't experience any success. And then they're totally lost. And it's really disappointing because they're motivated, but they need the right kind of help. They need tiny habits and closer guidance, that's approachable.
Well, as a person with an inherited sweet tooth, I can verify that you can cut back on sugar, but you have to do it slowly, or else one of these days the craving will hit so hard you'll just run to the bakery and inhale everything in sight, which is definitely not good for us.
Yeah.
And I can also attest. So way back in 2006, I had a doctor as a client. I was a portrait photographer, and because of the family history of diabetes on my dad's side of the family, that's why I was laughing earlier about, well, you can take the meds, but if you don't address the underlying issues, he didn't address the
Right.
underlying issues. She pointed out that because I weighed over 250 pounds and I had a family history of diabetes, that I was perhaps screwed, which was her term, worked perfect on me because my little lizard brain said, I'll show you screwed. Not that she ever saw me again, but it took quite a while, but I lost over 100 pounds. And here we are in late 2024, and I've kept off about 75% of it,
That's
which,
awesome.
yeah, which is rare. And so there's days, like between caregiving and menopause, my weight crept up, and then I switched to more vegetarian and to fix another problem, which that didn't work. But I lost a bunch of weight, and it's like, oh, I'm really enjoying the different variety of foods. So I'm sticking to the predominantly vegetarian diet. But when I went on the weight loss journey and I hit a huge plateau, I started working with a personal trainer, and she was making nutritional suggestions, changes. And she basically said, make one a week. And she was very adamant. One change a
Right.
week. And once you have adapted to that change, then make another one. And I thought,
Yes.
dang, that's going to take me forever. But I almost eat no red meat. My sugar has gone way down because when you cut back on your sugar, you can taste it a lot better in things like fresh fruit.
Yes. I
So
mean,
it
that
is,
actually is our sweet tooth actually is evolutionarily our drive to eat fruit to get the nutrients and antioxidants that are in fruit. So generally, if we have a sweet, I mean, I have a sweet tooth. Mammals have sweet tooth. Dogs have sweet tooth. We are built that way. um, I supercharged mine because I got really into having chai lattes, and those are just sugar bombs. And this was before I was really aware of sugar. And um, I've been there, so it's not like I was just born and I was like a marathon runner and I never had a sweet tooth. Like I was the worst of them. I was probably having 100 grams of added sugar a day, mostly in chai lattes, like 2 and 3 a day.
Oof.
And so I get how hard it is to cut down sugar. But you're right. Once you start slowly getting away from sugar bombs like that, your palate starts to return to more of a natural savory palate. And then you're pretty satisfied with lower levels of sweetness. And what I found is once I finally gradually cut down sugar, now like the processed sweets don't taste appealing to me. They taste like this really, it's almost like a sound that's tinny. Like it's not like it has nice bass and treble. It's like this tinny. That's how the sweet tastes to me. It just tastes really empty and not satisfying. But yet when I have like my thing is chocolate chip cookies. And so if I make a batch of chocolate chip cookies, those taste great. I enjoy them. I don't binge on them. I enjoy them. But the I appreciate the sweet more, but I don't crave the like junky sources of it, if that sounds right, because my palate has really returned to normal. So that's one of the blessings of cutting down sugars. When you do it, your palate will shift a bit, and you won't crave those sticky sweet things anymore that your palate was used to. So
So I have a quick funny story about chocolate chip cookies and cravings. So while I was on my weight loss journey, you've heard of food porn? Well, I had a serious chocolate chip cookie food porn dream. I mean, it was like, I mean, it wasn't legitimately porn, but it was really bad. And I woke up thinking, who the heck has a freaking dream like that about chocolate chip cookies? And I probably posted something silly about it on one of the social media platforms. And one of the instructors at the gym I attended and my personal trainer is like, just eat the damn cookie. I'm like, but. And they're like, just eat the cookie. I'm like, okay, I'll eat the cookie. But yeah, it was just like my body was like, hello, if we do not get a chocolate chip cookie thing, bad things will happen.
yep,
And
yep.
my other favorite thing is nutritionists basically saying the best way to quit sugar is just to go cold turkey. And literally, and this one is a serious YouTube expression, my family going, no, because they knew what would happen if I tried that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so painful. You can do that, but it's going to be like 2 weeks of pain.
Oh, thank you.
That to me is not, some people can do that. Some people are really extreme. They're like, it makes me think of like CrossFitters who like, they decide to like eat paleo and like they're eating paleo, but most people aren't like that. I'm not like that. And I don't want to go through, sugar is an addiction. Sweetness isn't, it's actually a sweetness addiction. It's not truly sugar, it's the sweetness. But who wants to go through that level of pain? We should be gentle to ourselves, give ourselves grace, and do it in a slow fashion so it's sustainable. Like you did with your weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want a yo-yo diet and we don't want a yo-yo sugar. Because like you said, if you totally deprive yourself, you'll be miserable and you are going to catch yourself rewarding yourself with sugar because you feel so deprived. So,
Or you have really strange food
gradually and
dreams.
kindness to yourself is always the right approach.
That is true. And then I've also learned that there are just certain things that are not worth eating, drinking, whatever, because the enjoyment isn't equal to what I'll have to do to, not that you can burn off a bad nutrition, but like you can have a chocolate chip cookie and then you can go jump on your Peloton for 2 hours, but it doesn't really negate the cookie.
Yeah.
So that was frustrating to learn during my weight loss journey. I'm like,
Yeah.
but I did
I
a
mean, my
3 hour
approach
bike ride.
I mean, my approach to that is, so as I said, I recommend following the American Heart Association guidelines. So for women, that's 24 grams of sugar a day. And so, a sweet treat will fit in there. But a couple sweet treats won't. Like I wouldn't have dessert at lunch and then have it at dinner. And I generally don't have a sweet breakfast. So I get a lot of ability to have a treat later in the day because I don't have sugar calories at breakfast. So that is kind of a game changer for people starting with a pretty carb heavy breakfast, like a muffin, which I have to just say is actually cake, without it's a cupcake without frosting. Um, that can really derail sugar goals, and it's just not as enjoyable as my beloved chocolate chip cookie. I would sacrifice a lot. I wouldn't have, strawberry yogurt to start my day. I'd way rather have chocolate chip cookie at the end of the day, or a couple, or whatever. So kind of trading and just realizing how much sugar is in some of those items. And once you start laying those labels, it's just shocking. Um, I found yogurts that have more sugar than those little white donuts. And I know none of us would think those little white donuts are a healthy breakfast.
No, those are
Um,
those are pretty bad.
so yeah, I mean, when you really start putting labels head to head, it's shocking to see how much sugar is in some of these things. Like one of my favorite protein drinks was like a chai. I mean, I had a real chai problem. I think you're getting that message. Um, but it was a chai protein drink that was vanilla. And so if I was skipping a meal or I missed a meal because I was really busy and I was like, I just got to grab something protein, I would grab this protein drink. Not having looked at the label, it had 45 grams of sugar in it. Why don't
Yikes.
I just go have a cup of Haagen-Dazs? I
Yeah,
mean,
for real. I'd love
yeah,
Haagen-Dazs
so
much more.
yeah, a little awareness can go a long way. So
Yeah, once you
it
get
doesn't have to
through,
be, you don't have to be deprived. You just have to read labels and then make choices and you'll feel great about your choices.
yeah, during the whole journey, man, grocery shopping took forever because I had to read so many labels, and then tracking what I was eating was really hard because I make everything from scratch. So it wasn't like I could just read the label. It was like, well, I put in wheat flour and this, it's just ugh.
Right.
But that kind of helps me segue into, we all know about the exercise because I talk about it a lot on on this show. So I think one of the things people may not be as familiar with is being a lifelong learner and challenging your brain to learn new things actually allows us to grow new neurons, which is not easy to say. And so, can you address why that's important and maybe how we can go about it? I do crossword puzzles daily, but they're pretty easy. The other day I was really frustrated because I'm like 3.5 minutes on this tiny little mini crossword. I'm like, I got really stumped on a few things. And then most of the time I could do them like in a minute or so because there's only like, I don't know, like I think 8 or 10 words total, up and down or down and across or however you call that. And I know that that's not challenging my brain that much, a little bit on the one that took me forever to do. But why is challenging our brain and essentially being lifelong learners, why is that important? I mean, like, you're a doctor, you've had lots of training. Like, why should you continue learning more stuff?
Right. So it's such a great question, really important question. So, we know that higher education or more education is a protective factor for Alzheimer's disease, but it actually doesn't have to be just as formal education. And so um, what really when we're looking at education, really what we're looking at is how much hard thinking we've done. And so that can come from formal education, that can come from critical thinking, that can come from working hard, it can come from creative endeavors. What happens when you're using your brain in those ways, it actually demands more blood flow. Our brain is the most metabolically active organ in our entire body. It gets about 2 to 3% of the blood flow, but it has 20% of the metabolism. I'm sorry, it's about 2 to 3% of the volume of our body, and it gets 15 to 20% of the blood flow and metabolism. So when you're thinking hard and when you're doing crosswords and anything that stimulates your brain, you're driving blood flow to your brain. So that's bringing in nutrients, it's taking out toxins, it's also encouraging the neurons that are there to survive. And if there are new neurons making connections, it's delivering the nutrients they need to be supported. So we all are familiar with people who retired early and then didn't do much, and they seem to not do that well cognitively. It's really important to keep challenging our brain. So that can be through, creativity. Any sort of creativity is actually a really highly demanding cognitive activity. It can be through brain games, like you said. One thing I would say about brain games, we tend to do the things we're good at. So I have a feeling you're pretty good at crosswords. I am very bad at crosswords. I don't like get like how the hint is driving me towards it. There's like a certain way you read those. Do you know what I mean? That's
You have to
not in my
get
wheelhouse.
practiced
So
at them. There's one clue that keeps popping up. It's not always worded the same, but the word is era or eras. And when I first got the clue, I was like, this answer doesn't make any sense. And I hated crosswords as a younger adult for the same reason. I'm like, this clue does not make sense with this word until you start piecing it together. Then it's like, it kind of forces you to think more like the person who wrote the puzzle.
yes.
At least that's my assumption. But yeah, it's like there's a new game on the Apple News app. It's called Quarterlies, and it's basically fragments of words, and you're supposed to put them together. And I would probably do a lot better if it was an actual tactile game, so I could actually move them around instead of
Right.
having to do it visually. Because I completely suck at that game. I don't play it. It
Yeah,
frustrates
so
me.
so talking about, liking to do crosswords, we tend to do what we're good at. And so that part of our brain is generally pretty well developed and healthy and supported. And so that's where some of these there's workbooks and there's computer programs online that you can do that kind of force you to exercise all the parts of your brain. So, if so you like crosswords, I like Sudoku. So if I just do Sudoku, it's like I'm going to the gym and I just like love biceps curls, and I'm just like, I've got these rockin' biceps, right? But the rest of my body's going to be super wimpy because I don't like leg day and I don't like back day. I just like doing bicep curls. Okay. Same with your brain. So those programs and like workbooks, I have one, a lot of my patients like to do like pen and paper instead. I'm kind of tactile too. I like pen and paper. So over the course of a week, it'll push them through math, logic, spatial, word recognition, all the different things that our brain's doing, attention, multitasking. And that's where those really shine. So I think of those workbooks or the online, where they run you through something every day and they track your progress. I think of those kind of like a multivitamin. It's not the richest brain exercise in the world, but you're getting a little bit of everything you need every day. So I like that. I think it's a great baseline. And then from there, because I'm always doing like little things that for sure you can fit in your day and those usually will fit, then you can build on top of that foundation. Then you might take an online class. I mean, I know you're a photographer. I have always wanted to be good at photography. And every time I learn all these different adjustments, I remember it for a day and then I don't. But, treat yourself, especially if you're a caregiver and you have some time to get distracted and get into what you want to do and get lost in a class or an online course or, find something that's really challenging and something that really interests you, maybe learning a language you used to speak in high school or getting back to an instrument you used to play. So get a little baseline on there because you can find the time for that. No matter how busy you are, you got to find that time to keep your brain healthy. Um, and then try to build that out as you find moments here and there. Because especially those kinds of classes will also bring joy, which is going to be even richer of an experience for the brain. And if those don't fit your schedule, I'd like to recommend that people do neurobics. You've heard of these neurobics, this kind of new,
No, but I
you
mean,
can imagine what they
I've,
are. So
yeah, I mean, like I haven't heard that term, but my brain popped up with an image. So,
yeah, this is something that if you're caregiving, you can do during your caregiving day without anybody hardly noticing it. So the concept is to do two different brain processes at once or do a brain process you do in a different way. So simple ones would be, brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand because you really have to think about it and you have to actually go through all the motor movement because you're not on automatic with your dominant hand. You're like, whoa, this is actually a lot of like coordination. You're making things purposely hard, but they're brief things so you can fit them in your day. An idea of like combining two things would be like walking up the stairs, counting backwards by fives. So you're giving yourself not a super complex task, but it definitely requires some attention while you're doing something physical. And then I liked So I like to break up my sedentary day. I sit at a desk a lot of the day, and I try to get up every half an hour and do squats. And part of that is because you release these healthy hormones from your muscles that actually support your brain cells in terms of survival and growth of new neurons. So I like to try to like push those hormones out of my leg muscles as fast as I can, to just give myself a little break. But I'll also add like a math problem, or I'll add some neurobic, like starting to say the alphabet backwards, which for me that's pretty tough. Like I find that really takes a lot of visualization for me. But I'll do my squats and I'll do the alphabet backwards. And so that's easy to fit into my day no matter how busy it is. But I'm getting a couple things. I'm getting blood flow to important parts of my brain, and then I'm also getting this release of these muscle hormones. The most important one, for our discussion, is called brain derived growth factor. I mean, it's a little misnamed because it doesn't only come from the brain, it's also from our muscles. So, where we can like get all these things going at the same time, even in a brief burst, gives our brain really some a health boost throughout the day.
So the couple of examples of neurobics, which I like that term a lot, that I have learned over the past years is walking and having a, in-depth conversation with, another family member, caregiver, neighbor, whatever. That doesn't work too well with me. I walk with a dog, so she's not a very good conversationalist. And so for people like me who end up walking alone, I do talk to the neighbors, but it's not in-depth conversations generally, is to challenge yourself to notice and name like all the things that start with P. So I live in the Sierra foothills in California. I can't think of anything that starts with a P other than maybe pet. So that would take a lot of attention and thinking while I'm walking, which is generally up and down rolling hills with the dog who likes to stop and sniff at everything.
Yeah.
And you'd have to look. I don't think I'd pick P because I'm still not coming up with any P words. But the next time I take her out, I will try the P's and see what I can find. Pine trees, there we go. Duh.
Yeah, there you go. No, that's such a great example. Anywhere where you can be more mindful and get your brain engaged. And it also gets us away from kind of the ruminating and whatever is just tracking around in our brain, making us crazy. That's happening to all of us. I mean, it just gets you thinking, observing. You can even do shapes too. It could be that every time your dog stops at a tree, this time you're trying to see how many squares you can find before they start walking. And then the next time, maybe it's circles and maybe it's triangles. You can do spatial, you can do words. I mean, there's just infinite ways. You can do a category. Every time they stop, I'm a dog walker too. I love walking my dog. Every time they stop, you could do a category. I'm going to see how many movies I can think of before we walk in again. And the next one, maybe it's celebrities, which I couldn't do because I don't know any celebrities. But
Yeah, me
it can be
neither.
songs, it can be colors, it can be kinds of cars. Categories are great if you're doing like, verbal exercise. And it's kind of fun to think of the next category. And if you're walking with somebody, it's fun to do categories together. So you can go back and forth, like let's say it's cars. It's like, oh, Chevy, Ford, GMC, Ferrari, Rolls Royce, whatever. And then maybe you get stumped and you're kind of going, I can't think of any. And so then maybe they do two or three in a row, and then that triggers something and you jump back in. But that's one of our cognitive tests we do when we're looking at cognitive function is category fluency. So it's part of your brain that gets really rusty as we move through the aging process. So exercising that category fluency, and like you mentioned letter fluency, that's a different category. Those are really great exercises. So I love that you brought that up. It's a perfect example.
Yeah, you can walk and count backwards from 100 by 7, but I am not a math person, so I get to 93 and then it's like, I get
Sevens are
stumped.
hard. I mean, I think fives are hard enough.
Oh, okay. I can
Fives,
do fives.
yeah, you can do fives, and it's not, it's really the attention. That's an attention test more than it should be a math test. So if it's becoming too much of a math test, switch to fives and just count backwards by fives.
Yeah, I've had
That's one
people,
of our neurology tasks, right? You probably saw that with your mom. We ask you to
uh-huh.
count backwards from 100 by sevens. And then the alternative to that is spelling world forwards and backwards. So you can always do forwards and backwards spelling. That's a great brain exercise. But I don't know if you have time for a funny story about neurobiomics from my aerobics from my clinic.
Yes.
So I had a personal trainer who I had a lot of my patients were seeing her, and she was doing neurobics with them. And so it was just great. The patients loved it. It was fun, and it was great for their brain health. So she came in and did a seminar in my waiting room, and I was just at my desk doing work at the end of the day, and they're out there hooting and hollering. And so I didn't know what was happening, but she had brought a yoga ball. And so they finally made me come out and do this exercise with them. She had a yoga ball, and she would have somebody sit in the middle of the room on the yoga ball, and she would have them basically spelling their name with their hips, writing in
Oh,
cursive. So you know what that looks like. So
funny.
it looks pretty crazy. So they're, spelling their name with their hips. And so they would spell it forwards and then they spell it backwards. And one of the gentlemen going, actually, before they did that, they spelled it forwards and backwards sitting down. Then they did this and got their spines loosened up and their CSF flowing and all this good blood flow. And at the end of the session, when he spelled his name forwards and backwards, he spelled it totally correctly. And so it was pretty impressive just to see that waking up your brain, waking up your body, getting that blood flow to the brain is really important. But it was kind of a hoot because they made me come out and I had to spell my name. And I mean, it was hilarious, fun exercise to do. It looked crazy, but it was fun and it was effective.
I did one in 2018. I was at a brain health awareness event, and they had a personal trainer that ran us through. Um, they were literally brain exercises. So it you had to spell your name basically. So like a consonant would be a jumping jack, and vowels would be a burpee. And I decided real quick I was not spelling Jennifer
You're
because
like, I
I
just
don't
go by
like.
Jay.
Yeah, I was like, Jen with two N's is good because that was like three jumping jacks and one freaking burpee.
Right.
And the other thing, so you could do that. I would spell different words, obviously, challenge yourself that way because after a while you'll be able to do the your name pretty easily with whatever you choose. Choose different calisthenic type exercises, but the other one that she had us do, I think we were doing like the boxer running in place, fast feet,
Mhm.
and she would call out right, and you'd have to turn to the right, and then she'd be like center, and then right, center, left, and oh my God, you could literally feel your brain just, it was like, ah, I'm trying to do too many things at once. You could literally feel like, I don't know if this is actual, but it really felt like you were literally exercising your brain. Like your brain was doing the calisthenics and your body. It was intense. And I tried so hard to get the trainers at this gym I went to incorporate that because they were all like my age or a little bit younger, so like we were all in our 40s at the time, maybe. Yeah. I guess I was 52. And but yeah, we were all essentially middle-aged women, and I'm like, we really need to incorporate this because you guys will not believe what this feels like.
Yep.
They did not incorporate it, which was kind of a bummer. And maybe I'm a Peloton freak, so I should maybe send them a message that says, hey,
Yeah,
if
you
you've got
should.
some,
That would be great.
because they do everything. But yeah, that one is just, I couldn't believe how that felt. And I'm a daily exercise person now. That was not something I was doing back in 2006 when I
Yeah.
started on my weight loss journey. I started with water aerobics because it was easier on my knees. And
Yeah.
so I have a question. Hopefully we can answer it relatively quickly.
Okay.
So I am a creative person. I took up a new hobby during the pandemic. People know it's because we moved and I got rid of all the stuff that I hadn't done. I wanted a hobby that did not clutter up the house, did not have a huge learning curve, and your neighbors weren't going to run away if they saw you coming with something. So I make handmade greeting cards,
Oh,
and
that's lovely.
I find that super meditative. But you
Yes.
were talking about how, and I've talked to other guests about using creativity as kind of a self care tool. But how, like, I know when I'm doing things, all of a sudden, so one of the designers I like refers to it as popcorn brain, where the
Mhm.
ideas are popping. And
Mhm.
my husband heard that phrase and he looked at me and he goes, do you have that? And I'm like, oh, hell yes. Like all of a sudden things are just popping. And it's like, oh my God, I don't have enough time to do these 15 things that just popped into my head. So if it's not a challenge, you're trying new things, you're like, I I like variety, so I'm always trying new things. Is that as good as something that challenges your brain? Because I think the creativity comes from a different hemisphere of your brain, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
I
no, I
hope you're
mean,
following my question.
creativity, actually, when we look at functional MRIs with creativity, it activates a lot of areas of the brain simultaneously. So it's a really rich cognitive experience. And I'm somebody who I believe that everybody's creative. I think that a lot of people won't give themselves the gift, it feels indulgent, of playing and being creative. But I think it's a really important human characteristic that we should give time to, because I think it really does. It exercises the brain while giving us a mental break at the same time. Like, it's such a unique experience. And I'm sure you were like, you're exercising the brain so much, but you're getting a meditation out of it. Like, it's just such a unique, healthy, joyful experience. And so, but I think we feel indulgent sometimes when we take the time to play. So I'm glad you're doing that. And I would encourage your listeners, if they can make time to do that, it really, it's not indulgent. It's not frivolous. It's not silly. It's an important cognitive, mental, and for a lot of people also spiritual exercise. So I think creativity is really important. Um,
Well, that's good. I'll keep doing that because I keep reading now. The older we get, the less TV we should watch. So makes me
Well, I think
happier.
certainly with the TV that's available to us now, I think we all should watch a whole lot less of it, because it's mostly garbage and it's so argumentative. It's
That's
hard to find
true.
TV that's not argumentative. So,
Yeah, the only reality TV that I like is America's Got Talent. So, that's barely reality TV compared to some of the garbage that is available,
yeah.
which I think I watched one segment of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It was literally between the two commercials, so however long that was, 5 minutes. And by the time we got to the next set of commercials, I was like, my brain feels dead. Like I can't.
Seriously, I'd like to do cognitive testing and see if we can actually measure the IQ drop from watching a couple sessions of that.
Or, what is it, the Real Housewives of whatever city? I'm like, why? Or, oh, they had the Golden Bachelor. It's like, ew. I watched one series, I think it was The Bachelorette or something. I was like, this is gross. I don't want to watch this stuff.
Yeah.
But on a
There's
more
not a lot that's enriching out there.
no, I like to be entertained. So I maybe watch not every night, but maybe an hour an evening. So I'm doing okay. But there is, for people who do not have the time to get all involved or the money to get all involved in a new hobby, there is, and I don't know the exact term, but it's basically a drawing style, neuro something drawing that actually calms down the brain. So you just whip out a piece of paper and pen and you just draw squiggly lines. And where the lines intersect, you kind of have a hard V, and then you just take those little V's and you take your pen, you turn them into U's. Let's try not to bump the mic. And I've done it when I'm stressed and I don't feel like getting into the mess of card making, because there are times it looks like my office has turned into a craft room that exploded. And sometimes I just don't have time for that. And it is amazing how that can actually just, your brain just kind of takes a deep breath and just lets it all go. I find it really fascinating. There's the Zen Tangles is also kind of meditative, and I have a gal in my card making group that I started that does Zentangles. She and her daughters do it on Zoom, and they follow a gal on YouTube that like teaches people how to do it. And then she comes to my card making class and turns them into, really cute greeting cards that she gives to friends. So it's like she's getting multiple brain
Right.
benefits, and she's got to be in her 70s. So, it's definitely positive, but I like the whatever they call that. There's a specific term, but I bet you if you went into YouTube and typed in neuro and drawing, it would probably come up. But yeah, a lot of people use it to calm anxiety. And then you could color in the little shapes if you want with pen or pencil or, whatever, or you can just leave it. I actually did one black pen on white paper, and then we were on vacation and my husband was making me crazy. So I'm like drawing away. And when I got home, because I did it on cardstock, I just used the ink and colored it and then turned it into probably a Halloween card because it was kind of a crazy looking background. And it was like, oh, this is kind of fun. It's nice to know that creativity fires up more parts of your brain because um, that is how I relax. So glad I'm doing my
Yeah,
brain
and what a
favors.
great example. I was gonna say, what a great example. We're trying to talk, find moments in the day where caregivers can find a little bit of respite. You know what? That's 1 minute. That's 2 minutes. Like it might be enough of a mental break just to get a little bit of a reset. I get it, how stressed caregivers are. I've been there, and you just sometimes can't find your way out. Um, and you don't have any time, it feels like. So even just those tiny little moments of just disconnecting, the constant thoughts and stress and answering the same questions and, all the nitty-gritty physical stuff that comes at some stages, just getting that miniature mental break, just getting a couple squats in that get your circulation moving, just something different that's momentary can really recharge you. Um, it doesn't seem like it'd be enough, but it's something, you know?
Yeah, definitely something is better than nothing. I had like a frustrating week where it was like, why is technology and like, why is the world striving to make things difficult for me this week? And I had just enough time to like do a little something something, but certainly not enough time to like even get into making any kind of the parts of a card. And so I'm like, I was probably between seasons or projects or whatever. And I literally just got out my supplies, kind of tidied them up a little bit, and was thinking about, like a Halloween card or what do I want to make for the Christmas cards that we're going to send out this year. And you start going through the all the supplies where it's like, I am not nearly as bad as some card makers who have like everything. I have more tools than I have time to use, so I'm really frugal on buying new ones because it's not that I mean they're not particularly expensive, but they're not cheap either. And if you don't have time to use the new one, why buy it? That's it might be really cool, but that's my theory. And I literally just sorted through and kind of looked at what I had and kind of got some ideas, and then it was like time to make dinner, and I was like, oh, I feel a lot better. And all I did was like rifle through my tools, wipes through my stuff. And we have a tradition, we call it um reverse trick or treating. So we because of where we live, um the houses are close together, but the driveways are really long and we live on a hill. So we don't get the kids coming to the door because it's just too much work. And we also don't have sidewalks or street lights. So it's better to be in the other part, the different section of the community that's flatter and the houses are closer together. It's more like a traditional neighborhood instead of this craziness that we have going on over on this side. And we go out on our golf cart with a little goodie, like a little brown paper bag with a gift, not a gift card, a greeting card and candy in it. And we pass them out to the kids. And I have tried new techniques for backgrounds with no idea of what to use for them. And so the other day I'm like, I have all of these backgrounds. I am going to turn all of these into greeting cards for Halloween and use these up, and just looking through them and saying, well, what can I do with this background? What can I do with that background? Because obviously they're not all going to work for the same style. And it's amazing how relaxing that is. It's like, you almost think it'd be frustrating because it's like you don't have time to get started, especially when the popcorn starts popping and you're like, oh, I got all these great ideas. You almost have to write them down. So it's like you can have little, 5 minutes here, 20 minutes there, just doing a little something, something. I really like the whatever that neuro drawing is called. I should have
Yeah.
looked that up. Because, you could do that. I would have to do that if I was on the phone with insurance companies because I hate doing that stuff.
Right.
Which, that might help. Maybe next time I have to call them, I'll just get out a piece of paper and a pen and be like, I'm going to make wiggly lines instead of curse at these people who are asking me stupid questions. But this has been awesome. What is the title of your book again? Brain.
It's called Brain Health Action Plan. Looks like that if you're looking online. It's available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, walmart.com. The audio book is just about to come out if you like that, and it's free on Kindle right now. So if you
Awesome.
if you like it, and I hope you will, I hope you'd also leave a review. That would be really helpful to me.
Yeah, it's really important to do those Amazon and Barnes and Noble reviews because the whole world revolves around all these algorithms these days. I would know because I have to
Surprisingly,
deal with
it
them too.
does.
Yeah, I love having to come up with podcast titles to please an algorithm first so that those of you who are listening can find this great topic we've been talking about. We're talking about sweets and creativity, two of my favorite things. But yeah, it's so much fun. So I want to thank, I'm going to say Dr. Taryn for coming on and writing what I know is going to be a fantastic book or is a fantastic book. It is always hot linked in the show notes, so you guys can click on it and go right to Amazon and just read it. Get it on Kindle if it's still free when this comes out, and leave her a nice review.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you today, and you've given me some great ideas of things I want to incorporate. So thank you so much for the inspiration.
Well, 7.5 years of podcasting. If I haven't learned a few things, I'm in deep trouble. And I always tell people, because my mom's been gone for 4.5 years, it's like, where were you 6 years ago when I needed to know this stuff?
Yep.
But our knowledge is getting better about this disease and how to maybe prevent it, how to slow it down, how to care for people who have it. So I'll just keep trucking along. Fading Memories is also available wherever you get your podcasts.